Nice to be with you all again. And, I'm still not completely organized. I still have to get my PowerPoint ready. We're going to have a seminar. Here it comes. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so, let's get this one up. And then we go here. Okay. And we also go here to, and then okay. Joy.
Guru Maharaj, just before you start, only Mataji Dira Lalita sign up for presentation to read something. So,
okay. All right. I'm seeing a picture of a cow being milked. Oh, that's Vir Gopal. Okay. Okay. Again, welcome to everyone. We see some all sorts of Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. I won't say hello to you individually because that takes time, but just to say Haribol. And we have a song. We have a song to sing from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And the song is, what's that called? Doesn't have oh, here it is. They just call it by the beginning of Yauvane Jakhon dhana-upārjane. Okay, so we're getting the third song of Dainya, of humility, in the songbook of Saranagati. I believe tomorrow is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's disappearance day of your Tirabhav Titi. So it's nice to remember Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Incidentally, I just read a few minutes ago, there's a presentation being given by Krishna Abhishek Prabhu about Bhaktivinoda Thakur today and tomorrow. Krishna Abhishek Prabhu did his doctoral thesis on Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Unfortunately, the timing is not so ideal for us in Europe because he's speaking from central USA. But if you're interested in that, you go to the, what is it called? The GBC Strategic Planning Facebook page. I don't know, something like that. I think his writing on Bhaktivinoda Thakur could be quite interesting because he is, well, you can say he's speaking about intellectual history, and he is sort of placing Bhaktivinoda Thakur into late 19th, early 20th century intellectual history. And of course, highlighting his personalism in contrast to the trend, the big trend of the time to promote Advaita Vedanta. Okay, Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditanscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur's song, we can read the translation first. When I was young, I greatly desired to earn money. At that time, bearing in mind the codes of religion, I took a wife. Together we set up a household, wasted much time, had many sons and daughters. My heart grew heavy. The burden increased day by day. I felt my life at a standstill. Old age came, grabbed me, and made my mind fickle and disturbed. Diseases trouble me now, and constant anxiety has made me feverish. My heart burns from lack of satisfaction, and I see no way out. All is darkness, and I am very much afraid. The current of this worldly river is strong and relentless. A frightening, gloomy death approaches. How I wish I could give up my worldly attachments. I would worship you, O Lord, but it is a useless hope. Now please hear me, O Lord, for I am utterly helpless. Bhaktivinoda says, without your mercy, everything is lost. Please give me the shelter of your lotus feet. So it's another autobiographical song, we could say. Yauvane Jakhon dhana-upārjane hoinu vipula kāmī. Yauvane Jakhon dhana-upārjane hoinu vipula kāmī. Dharama smariyā hinīra dhorinu takhona kāmī. Dharama smariyā hinīra dhorinu takhona kāmī. This is too high. It's too early in the morning. It's not early in the morning. It's late morning. Anyway. Sāra-tat kāla-khoy koinu koto pātā'ye tāhāra sahita kāla-khoy koinu koto suta-sutā janama-dhorinu marame hoinu koto suta-sutā janama-dhorinu marame hoinu koto sangsarera bhara bagadine dine achala hoinu gati sangsarera bhara bagadine dine achala hoinu gati Vādake asiya garilo amare astira hoino mati. Vādake asiya garilo amare astira hoino mati. Idaya astira Chintaya jarita abhave jalita chita. Idaya astira chintaya jarita abhave jalite chita. Uparjane andhakāra-moya takhona hojete pita. Uparjane andhakāra-moya takhona hojete pita. Sangsara-tatani sotana-heshesha maranani-kate gora sāra-tat jotanahe shesha marananitate gora sabasamakiya gojigotomaya eyasya vipula sabasamakiya gojigotomaya eyasya vipula Edeshuna Prabhu Amigati Bhaktivinoda Edeshuna Prabhu Amigati Bhaktivinoda Avakripa-vina Sakali Nirasha Dehamode Padasraya Avakripa-vina Sakali Nirasha Dehamode Padasraya Yauvane Jakhon dhana-upārjane koinu vipula kāmī Yauvane Jakhon dhana-upārjane koinu vipula kāmī dharama smariyā hinīra dhorinu tāhāra dharama smariyā hinīra dhorinu takhona. So again, the translation, when I was young, Yauvane, of course, means youth. So in my youth, Yauvane, I greatly desired to earn money. Dhana-upārjane. At that time, bearing in mind the codes of religion, I took a wife. Dharama, hoinu vipula kāmī. I don't remember vipula, but kāmī means, of course, one who desires. Dharama smariyā, remembering dharma, hinīra. Literally, I made a household, a maker of making a household. Dhorinu takhona ami. Ami, remembering dharma, Jakhon at that time. So Jakhon in my youth, Jakhon in my youth at that time, hinīra dhorinu. I took a wife. pātā'ye, tāhāra sahita, kāla-khoy, koinu, koto. Together, we set up a household. Sahita, I think, is together here. pātā'ye, not sure, but samsara means worldly life. Here it can mean household. And I wasted much time. kāla-khoy, koinu, koto. Koto is, it's a question word in Bengali. How much? Koto dam, how much it costs. Kāla-khoy, I spent, how much time I spent Bahu suta-sutā janama lovilo marame hoinu koto. Suta and sutā means son and daughter. Bahu, many. I had many sons and daughters. And here Bhaktivinoda Thakur is indeed, we can say, being autobiographical. He had many sons and daughters. He had altogether, I believe it was altogether 14 children. One of them died very young in childhood. Quite an amazing thing. He had so many children, and he did everything else that he did. Let's see. And he says, my heart grew heavy. Marama means heart. Hoinu, hoto. Hoto, okay. Here's translated as heavy. Sangsara bhara, bhare dine dine. Day by day, this burden, bhara, of material life increased. I felt my life at a standstill. Achala hoila gati. The course of life, the way, gati, achala, became non-moving. Old age came, grabbed me and made my mind fickle and disturbed. Bardake asya, bardaka is old age, asya, having come. Garilo amare, it grabbed me, I guess. Astir hoilomati, my mind became austere, became unsteady. Then, verse 4, diseases trouble me now. Pidai astir, that's the same. Astir hoilomati, pidai astir, chintai jvarita. Chinta means cares, anxiety, and jvarita, feverish. Jvara means fever. So I was fevered. Abhave jalita chitta. Let's see. Constant has made me feverish. My heart burns from lack of satisfaction. Chitta here is heart. Upai nadeki. I don't see a way out. All is darkness. Andhakāra-moya. Andhakar, darkness, maya, it's full of darkness. Akon hojechi bita. I'm very much afraid now. Akon means now. Sāra-tatani. Tatani. The current of this worldly river is strong and relentless. So current, tatani must be current. Shrota, the flow, the current. Nahe shesh, there's no end. It's relentless, no end. Marana nikate ghora, a frightening, gloomy death approaches. Nikate means near. Gora means fear, horrible. Marana, of course, means death. Shava samapiyā, how I wish I could give up my worldly attachments. Bojibo tomai e asha vipal more. I would worship you, O Lord, but it is useless hope. Vipal means fruitless. Asha means hope. So e asha, this hope, vipal, is hopeless, is fruitless, more. My hope is fruitless. Bojibo tomai, I would worship you. I will worship you. It's future tense. But then e asha vipal more. It's hopeless. The sabas samapya, I guess, is attachments, all attachments. Then the final verse, Ebe Shuno Prabhu, Ami gati-hīna Bhaktivinoda koi. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, listen to this, O Prabhu, O Master, Ami gati-hīna, I have no way, I have no course, my way is lost. Tava kripa bina shakali nirasha. There's no hope. Remember asha from the previous verse. So nirasha, no hope. Shakali, everything is hopeless. Tava kripa bina, without. Bina means without your mercy. Deha more podashroy. Deha, give me. More, give to me. Padashrai, your lotus feet. So it's more autobiography, and it's more lamentation, and it's hopeful. At the very end, he says, I have no hope, but I have the hope of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada uses the expression hope against hope. For one of the characteristics of bhava, of the stage before prema, is technically called bhava, and it has, I think it's 9 features, and one of them is asha bandha, literally bound by hope. And I think it's in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada translates that as hope against hope. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is expressing hope against hope. And in this way, he's inviting us to also have hope against hope. We may feel hopeless, but however hopeless we may feel, sometimes we may feel that way, but despite that feeling, there is hope. And why is there hope? Because there is Krishna. Krishna is all merciful. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Hare Krishna. Okay. What now?
Now maybe Mataji Dear Lalita can read something from her writings.
Okay. I think we'll need louder.
Hi, Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Can you hear me?
It's still quite faint sound.
Maybe I should come closer.
Now it's better, yes.
Okay, closer to the camera. I mean to the microphone, because that's incorporated in my laptop. It's not like separate microphone. Well, it's interesting that Guru Maharaj, you mentioned hope. Well, I wrote a little poem, and the name is Hope.
Okay.
And how this came about is I was thinking about things where I'm at, sort of in my searching for my purpose and for my actual purpose in spiritual life. But so I call this poem Hope, and it's very short. And if you're okay with that, can I read it?
I'm okay.
It's very short. Well, hope cannot rise above yet from a turbulent journey of this body and mind complexion, affected greatly by different kinds of cleansing showers, hiding from the crowds, licking the wounds of hurt false ego, shaking in fear from parting away from false identity. This mind and body are recovering in the divine shelter of the holy name and getting ready for the next journey. But what it is going to be? Is it again going to be a cleansing shower? Or is it going to be a nectar of entering the divine playful pastimes of the Lord? Well, that remains to be seen.
Okay. It's interesting. There, in different cultures, there are many different poetic forms, very specific poetic forms. Of course, in Sanskrit, there are many different meters, but also everyone has heard of haiku, I think, the Japanese, which I think uses, 17 syllables, and so on. Japanese have other forms. I know there's one that has 31 syllables, like that. So one thing you could try sometime is to find some classical form, whether it's, a Western form or something else, and
Okay.
see if you can make a poem in that. One thing also nice, you may have heard, maybe you've heard some of his poetry. My godbrother Kalakanta is very talented in transforming translations, Srila Prabhupada's translations of, he's done many things. The Bhagavad Gita, he's done selections from Bhagavatam, and he puts them into whatever it is, this sort of classical Western meter with rhyme, and it makes it very attractive and very engaging for the mind, I think. And one of the reasons poetry in earlier times was so prominent over prose is that poetry is more, it's easier to memorize poetry than it is to memorize prose, and especially if it's in meter and if it's rhymed. So, the epic poems and so on. In early times in India, the Puranic reciters, they were called sutas, and their profession was to recite Puranas from memory. They would memorize. So anyway, that's interesting.
Well, thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. I also realized when I learn verses of Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, if it's in the melody, it's easier to remember the words as well. So I will give it a go and find a form that.
You can try if you like.
I will try.
Okay. Did we have anyone else wanting to share something today?
Not that someone signed up, so if devotees, if someone wants to share.
Any spontaneous sharing? otherwise, I was thinking I could share a little before we continue our seminar. If you like, I could read a little from this book that I'm writing called Krishna's Wonderful Form. I think I said something about this some weeks ago. This is, I'm doing it in the form of a conversation. And I'll just read one section that I'm working on right now. So it'll sort of begin and end a little abruptly. The book is called Krishna's Wonderful Form, A Guide for the Perplexed. And in the first part, I've discussed the issue of idolatry in some detail. And that section, that first part is more or less completed, and I'm moving on now to a second part. What am I calling the second part? I forgot now. The Lord of the universe and his divine siblings. This is about Lord Jagannath. That's not for the whole part. Oh, yeah. Yes, part 2 is called Krishna in Our Lives. And then I have an explanation of Gaur-Nitai. Now we're looking at the different deities that one might see in a Krishna temple. And so I have a section on Gaur-Nitai called Two Masters of Bhakti Yoga. And then the second is called The Lord of the Universe and His Divine Siblings. So that's about Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And within this section about Jagannath, coming toward the end of this section, I'm discussing about Subhadra, explaining that Subhadra is Krishna's sister. And then I have, continuing that subject of Krishna's sister, I go into a kind of digression, a philosophical digression. And this is called, What Gender is God? ? And I'm also starting a new meeting, because the people that are meeting with the Swami, they're coming for some time, and then they're going home, and then they come back a few days later. So we have, at the beginning of this section, I'm welcoming my guests back, and I say, welcome again, Jake and Rabindra and Angela. I've introduced Rabindra in the last section. Rabindra is, his family is from Bengal, but he has grown up in South Africa. And so he doesn't know a whole lot about his own tradition, but he does have some exposure, especially through his grandparents. Welcome again, Jake and Rabindra, and Angela. Nice to see you again, Angela. Did Jake give you the recording of our last conversation? Angela says, yes, Swami, he did, and I just listened to it yesterday evening. I'm sorry I missed your talk last time. I had to fill in for a colleague at work. And I've explained before, her work is she's a physical therapist. But from the recording, I was intrigued by what you said regarding God being both self-satisfied and caring about all creatures. And just at the end, you started talking about Krishna's sister. What is her name again? and I say, Krishna, she's called Subhadra, a name that means she who is very glorious, splendid, and auspicious. And Angela says, a beautiful name. And you were saying she has some special function? Yes, she does. And as I was saying last time, this is a big topic that's also a bit, shall I say, esoteric. So please bear with me as we first need to talk about some abstract concepts, because we need to think about how God and this world are related in order to understand how Subhadra functions in relation to this world and to the non-temporal world. And Jake says, some days ago you were talking about avatars, that God relates to this world by appearing in different forms and acting in the world to restore cosmic order. And I say, yes, to restore dharma. And to better understand how God enters this world, it is helpful to understand God as the source of all energy. Wherever we see any sort of energy acting, we should expect that there is an energetic person behind that energy. And I have now a sort of subheading called the original sustainable energy source. Rabindra says, pardon me for interrupting, Swami, but when you say energy, are you referring to Shakti? And I say, yes, quite so, Rabindra. This Sanskrit word Shakti is important. As you suggest, it means energy, and it points toward the personal quality of the source of energy. In fact, this word Shakti goes together with another Sanskrit word, Shaktiman, the person who possesses power. Then Angela says, when I think of energy, I think of something impersonal, like the energy of the sun. Some people I know who see themselves as spiritual but not religious talk about energy, especially cosmic energy and such. And I say, cosmic energy certainly exists, and physicists try to understand its workings. But without acknowledging the supercosmic personal source of that energy, how much can physicists or any of us really understand? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that this phenomenal world, the cosmic manifestation, has a source, and the source is a person. Angela, still, when I think of energy, I must admit I don't automatically think of it as having a person as its source. It seems like all energy in our experience can be traced back to the sun, whether we talk of fossil fuel or wind power. And I say, yes, from our very limited perspective, energy seems to be like that. But what if we approach this issue from the other side, so to speak? We can start from personhood and proceed from persons to their energy. For example, you, Angela, cause all kinds of things to happen by your energy. When you help your physical therapy patients, you give them certain instructions. So you might tell a patient, now bend your knees slowly 15 times up and down. Angela laughs and says, yes, I tell them, and typically they protest. No, I can't do it. And I say, yes, but you persuade them and the patients do as you say, because they respond to your energy, which in this case comes in the form of help for their needs. This exchange cannot be reduced to simple physical interactions, because consciousness is at the core of the interaction, and consciousness cannot be reduced to something other than consciousness. Consciousness is not a physical thing, yet consciousness brings about physical motion and change. Then Jake says, Swami, as you know by now, I'm not always sure if I'm following the red thread in this discussion. So let me see if I'm keeping up with you. You started to explain how Subhadra functions in this phenomenal world. First, you made a general point about energy and its source. And you said that the Sanskrit term Shakti implies that there must be Shaktiman. And this connection helps us. This connection helps us to see that the source of energy is personal. And now it sounds like you're saying that this Shaktiman, possessor of Shakti, is what it is because of consciousness. And I say yes, or better, Shaktiman is what he is because of consciousness. As we are conscious beings, distinct from matter, so the supreme conscious being is distinct from matter. As we conscious beings have extremely limited control over matter, the conscious source of all matter has complete and unlimited control over all matter. What's more, all of matter, non-conscious objects in this world, constitute just one of three categories of the supreme conscious being's energy. This is where it gets interesting, and I should say, don't worry, I'm getting around to Subhadra again in a minute. As Shaktiman, Krishna exhibits unlimited sorts of energies, and these are in three categories. I'll spare you the technical terminology, but the first one is what I just now mentioned, this external energy. Then there is all of us, the countless multitude of conscious beings. We make up Krishna's marginal energy. These two energies constitute the totality of what we experience in this world, from stars to mountains, from sea urchins to our mental activity. And Rabindra says, marginal energy sounds strange. Is it related to what sociologists call marginalization of one social group by another? And I say, not exactly, though you could say that all of us, all living beings who are in this world, are marginalized from the society that makes up the third energy, Krishna's internal energy. And that's as far as I got this morning. But this is leading into introducing the internal energy, Hladini Shakti. And from there, then I can start to speak again about Subhadra, because Subhadra is very interesting. She is, in one direction, she is Mahamaya, and in the other direction, she is Yogamaya. So all of this gets quite dense, but I'm trying to keep it readable by having the different, having these interlocutors, these conversation participants interrupt and ask questions and so on. So that's what I've been working on. Did any of that make sense? Something. This is first draft, so it will probably be better after it's polished.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, and it's also more interesting because it's like, can be like dry philosophy, but in the way how you approach like the talk between all of you makes so much more interest and more, let's say, not funny, but, you know, more like, oh, I wanted to hear more than just to read about the technical points.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the idea.
Yes, very good.
It's kind of interaction between
Yeah.
So when there is informal interaction, so we grab we try to grab the things more clearly. So
Yeah.
that's the benefit. I have something to read, Maharaj.
Oh, okay. Sugopi has something.
Yeah. So this I'm not a very good writer, but this just came 2-3 days back in my mind. I hope everyone can hear.
Yeah. Yes.
I was in darkness of ignorance, searching for happiness until I found Krishna's abode and experienced all bliss. Oh, it was in Vrindavan where I found my love in Krishna's cove. Oh, walking on Yamuna shores, remembering the lures, Krishna's love implored. Oh, gallery of love with the screams of peacocks and the boats in the docks. Now I see the herds of cows walking in the dawn for their daily browse. Oh, it was in Vrindavan where I found my love in Krishna's cove. That's all.
Very nice. 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 So that there you have you do have some meter, I think. Very good. All right. So if you like, huh?
I would also like to say something about your writing. May I?
Oh, okay.
Tomyakarani.
Yes.
It feels very much like a play, like a play for a stage, or like a script for a movie.
Yeah.
And it definitely is a bridge preaching, because you're explaining it. Yes. When I was listening to you, I thought Guru Maharaj is just the example of what he's teaching, because I just kind of saw a stage in a room and a lamp with light and those people sitting next to you, and yeah, who knows, it might be a basis for something like that. It's very beautiful and very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if we would make it into a drama, then I think we would need to add some more conflict, because drama really only works if there's some sort of conflict. So then, yeah, then maybe we'd have to turn it more into a debate. That could, of course, be interesting. Okay, have to think about that. Maybe I should introduce some adversarial person, somebody who comes in and makes trouble. Because right now I just have these very kind of friendly, submissive listeners. But we could have someone who's a real troublemaker. I don't know. Okay.
It is maybe even inevitable, because when you talk about such important things like you discuss, and those people are definitely new in this whole subject, then probably the conflict will come itself. Krishna will help you.
Yeah, that could be. Well, so far, and I'm already, I think, more than or around 3/4 of the book is already done. It's a short book because Yauvane Swami said to try to keep it to around 35,000 words. So I don't know if I bring in some more intense, let's say, resistance, then it takes more to deal with it. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, time for some more
Guru Maharaj,
dialogical Vaishnavism.
Guru Maharaj, Mataji Katyayani raised her hand. So,
oh, okay.
Mataji Katyayani, can you unmute your microphone, please? I can't unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Mataji?
She maybe doesn't quite understand that.
Mataji, there is a small icon of the microphone in the left bottom corner of your screen. So you can just click on it to remove the cross, the red cross on it.
Now she's just sent a note that says, sorry, no, sorry, thank you. So maybe she changed her mind. Okay, she can come back maybe next time. All right, so can I share my screen? Not yet. Can you enable screen sharing? Share screen.
Now should be possible. Can you please check, Guru Maharaj?
Yes, now it's there. Okay. Okay, so dialogical Vaishnavism, continuing at a gradual pace, but nonetheless continuing. Trying to move this thing. Yeah. Okay. Last time we talked something about the idea of identity, and we had a fancy word, alterity, otherness. So identifying oneself as a certain something, part of a social group usually, but can be a religious group, which is a social group, has a social dimension. And yeah, we got a bit into different ways of understanding that. I won't go over that again. The idea was to keep that in mind, that we are, well, we're living in a world where we have some consciousness of self and other. And we might want to say that dialogue is about, you mentioned the word bridge, it's about finding ways to cross over, to make connections through dialogue, through speaking, through communication. The last couple of weeks, as many or most of you may know, there's been very intense protests. There's even been rioting, especially in America, but also other parts of the world that were sparked by the death of one African American in Minneapolis in north central USA by a policeman. He was, the word that's being used is that he was murdered, and it looks very much like that. And it was so terrible. I mean, this happens again and again and again in America. Police just shooting, killing, especially Black people. So this time it was particularly outrageous, and it was particularly unambiguous. In other words, it just was so clear, and it was also on video. So people saw this policeman holding this man down on the ground, on his neck, for over 9 minutes. And he was gasping. Well, he was choked to death. In the beginning, it was He was trying to call out, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And the policeman just held his knee until he suffocated to death. So it was just so clear that people have been utterly outraged. And so there have been huge protests on the streets of major cities in America and elsewhere in the world, that, you know, we can't go on in this way of having such attitude that it's all right to just kill someone of a different race, of a different religion, and so on. And so there's so much concern over this exact issue in the world today. It is a major issue. How are we as human beings relating to other human beings? So it seems to me that we as Vaishnavas should be somewhere out there having something to say on this subject. And it seems to me that we as Vaishnavas should be able to bridge the various divides of otherness through communication, through dialogue. And so what I'm suggesting is, through all of this, that dialogue is a skill, and we can learn this skill and we can practice it. I'm speaking mostly about dialogue in the context of religion, so interreligious, interfaith dialogue. But it's, of course, a topic that covers all kinds of areas. As we saw, we saw 4 different categories of others, of otherness. And it's such a big topic. I've recently seen now there is even an academic journal of dialogue studies. So it's something that one can make into a topic of study and research. So within the area of the study of religion, we've had this big issue. How do you study religion if you are an outsider to that religion which you are studying? Or outsiders will say, how can you properly study a religious tradition if you're an insider? Because you're an insider, you are blind to important aspects of the tradition that you would study. And I explained that now in more recent scholarship, it's recognized that in fact, no one is entirely inside or outside. Everyone is somewhere in between. Scholars admit, well, I'm also having some sort of faith, even if they're atheist. Then we were talking about the study of religion. I introduced one scholar especially prominent in the 70s, Wilfred Cantwell Smith, who made this distinction of cumulative tradition versus faith, in which he said faith is something of the heart. It's not something that the scholar can access directly, but the cumulative tradition is accessible and can be studied, can be talked about, can be analyzed, and so on. And so now I come back to my old friend, Ninian Smart. Now this may be too small for you to see. Well, let's see if I can make it full screen. Yeah. So one, I think, interesting, contribution that Ninian Smart made to the study of religion, the academic study of religion. He approached it from what's called a phenomenological perspective, which essentially means we're not going to judge religion, we're going to simply view and try to understand it as best we can. And he identified 7 dimensions, he called them dimensions, of every religious tradition. Every religion, he said, has a narrative dimension, which is to say, they will have stories, whether we speak of history or legends or myths, there are narratives which are in some way essential for the religious tradition to be what it is. There is a ritual dimension to every religion. This may be very elaborate, it may be very simple, but there will always be ritual. One time, a few years ago, I visited one devotee, a friend of mine in New Jersey, just outside Princeton. I stayed with him for the weekend. And it was Sunday morning. And he said, there's a Quaker church nearby, and I've always wanted to go attend one of their services. Would you like to come? I said, yeah, okay, let's go. Now the Quakers are a particular Protestant group. They don't call themselves Quakers, they're called Friends. I don't know the official name. But this is a Protestant group that was begun in, must have been the 18th century, maybe earlier, no, earlier, 17th century, in England. This was one of the more radical Protestant groups. And they wanted to emphasize from the Christian idea of the Trinity, there's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So they wanted to put emphasis on the Holy Spirit. And the way that, of course I'm simplifying, but the way they would do this is they would come together and simply sit together in the church in silence. And they would remain silent unless and until someone felt moved by what he or she considered the Holy Spirit to speak. So I'm speaking about ritual here, so someone may say, well, then they don't have any ritual. No, they have ritual. Their ritual is that we will have no ritual. And in fact, at the end of the service that we attended, one man stood up, not in a spirit of having some special inspiration, but it was more like, okay, now we've all been silent for a while. Now let's see if anyone has anything to say. Something like that. Anyway, it was interesting. There is an emotional dimension to any religious tradition. And here we might want to call attention to the individual side, the experiential side of religion as well. Some religion religious traditions are much more emphasizing experience than others, or emotion. So, for example, again, in Christianity, the Pentecostals are very much into a very emotional kind of display. And then individual versus social. So social and institutional dimensions of religion are always there. Even if someone is a sadhu who lives alone in a cave, we can say that still there is a social dimension, namely being isolated in a cave. And that person will be conscious, I am keeping myself isolated. But also that person probably has in his surroundings, or maybe in a wide area, some sort of reputation. So people say, oh yes, the sadhu up in the mountain, he's a very serious sadhu. He's there all the time, we hardly ever see him, or whatever. And then institutional dimension related to the social dimension can be very simple, or it can be very complex. We may look at ISKCON's institutional dimension, and we may think about its various organizational aspects, hierarchical aspects in particular, leadership, and so on. So all of that is one of these sort of major areas of dimension, or dimension of religion. There is the material dimension, which just points to the fact that every religious tradition has some sort of physical objects and physical places, and physical artwork and physical music, which something you can perceive with the senses. It includes all of the physical books, the form that the books take. We may, for example, consider the Sikh tradition, in which the Adi Granth, the original book, is the deity. If you go into a Sikh Gurdwar, you will see that the special throne, the special place, is occupied by the Adi Granth, by the book. So that is, we can say, an aspect of the material dimension, or one example of the material dimension of religion. Religious traditions have doctrines. Even those that claim they have no doctrine have some doctrine. This will be formulated usually in written form, but it might also just be in oral form. Indigenous traditions, we can say, where there's no writing, they will have some oral tradition which has some doctrinal elements, some basic ideas which are affirmed, which are asserted, that this is what we accept, this is the way things are. So it may be very simple, but it can also be extremely elaborate. And in our Vaishnava tradition, we of course have very elaborate development of some doctrinal points. I was just reading about the three energies, three types of energy of the Lord. The fact that we claim there is a God, that is doctrine, and so on. Now, I should mention these will invariably all be interrelated. So doctrine will be very closely tied in with ritual. Well, it'll be related with all the others. Finally, there is the ethical or legal dimension. And here you may see an obvious connection to the institutional and social dimension, but Smart makes a distinction here between the ethical and the social. So this is, I found it kind of helpful to think about different religious traditions. It's not the only way by any means, but it's one way of sort of getting a grasp, if we're trying to get a sense of what a religious tradition is all about, we may think in these terms. Okay, we don't have to elaborate so much. Okay, there I'm just explaining a bit what is meant by the phenomenology of religion. Fancy word. One way of understanding it, it's the grouping of essences, but I like this notion that the German scholar of religion from the 19th century, early 20th century, spoke of what is it that makes religion in general what it is. He argued that, and he used Latin to say it, it is the sense of the holy. And what is that? That is the mysterium tremendum et fascinans. There is a sense, he said, that all people have, that there is some great mystery. And this great mystery is fascinating, it is attractive, it is overwhelming, overwhelmingly powerful, and we are fascinated by that. That feeling, he said, points to what is the seed of religion. It's that from which all sense of religion comes. And along with this is the idea that we human beings are essentially religious. And again, in Latin, you can say, we are homo religiosus. We are the species of beings who are religious. And if we want to go back to Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says in the 17th chapter, Shraddha Maya, Ayam Purusha, we Purusha, human beings, are Shraddha Maya. We are full of Shraddha, of faith. The opposite of this would be Homo negligens, negligent. We neglect, we ignore religion. Okay, this, I don't want to drag this on too much. Now, in the study of religion, one sort of study of religion is comparative religion, and I'm just giving one example here. Barbara Holdridge, she was also my professor at University of California, Santa Barbara, and since then we've kept contact, and she is a very great appreciator of Vaishnavism, and she keeps friendship with several Vaishnavas, devotees. She reads Sanskrit herself. And she also reads Hebrew. And so her doctoral thesis was called Veda and Torah, Transcending the Textuality of Scripture, in which she makes a very detailed comparison of Veda with the Jewish Torah. The Hebrew Bible, the first 5 chapters of the Bible are called the Torah. More recently, she has published this book, Bhakti and Embodiment, Fashioning Divine Bodies and Devotional Bodies in Krishna Bhakti. And in this book, she focuses on Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and specifically, she gives a lot of attention to Jiva Goswami. Again, she reads the original. So this is a standard of scholarship where you learn the language that you're studying, so that you can go directly to the sources. In her book, Bhakti and Embodiment, which I was asked to be one of the reviewers of the book before it was published, because it's a peer-reviewed book. This means academic publishing means everything gets reviewed by other scholars before they're published. So I was one of the peer reviewers of the book, and I gave her good marks. And she says in the book that she is, although she's speaking about bhakti and embodiment, she's speaking about chanting of the holy name, she's speaking about the embodiment in scripture, she's speaking about the Bhagavatam specifically, she's speaking about embodiment in the holy Dham, and so on. But she leaves out, intentionally, she leaves out the subject of the physical deity. And the reason she did that, she says, is because of my book. I wrote Attending Krishna's Image, specifically on that subject, so she graciously skipped the topic and just directed to my book. A little more on comparative religion, since we're talking about dialogue. So this means encountering someone of a different religious tradition. Scholars make efforts to do comparison between religions sometimes. And I have to say this is controversial. Some scholars say, no, comparison is not a good idea. And they have various reasons why they say that. I found it useful for my own work in my book, Attending Krishna's Image, where I took this project called the Comparative Religious Ideas Project. This was a project that went over a period of 3 years, involving about 20 scholars. And they had meetings, several meetings at Boston University. And they produced 3 volumes, 3 books, as a result of their discussions and their research. So I made use of one of the 3 books called Religious Truth. I can't read and I don't remember the subtitle here, but it's, a volume in the Comparative Religious Studies Project, is what it is. Anyway, this is, I don't want to go too much into this, but I found this very useful for my own project of comparing within the Vaishnava tradition. Not just within Vaishnava, but within Gaudiya Vaishnava. So I made use of some of the concepts that they developed for making a comparison of the worship in Vrindavan of Radha-Raman and the worship outside London of Shri Radha Gokulananda. So here, in a sense, I would say is an example of how one can go from outsider to insider, back to outsider. These scholars who did this project, with one exception, were intentionally outsiders from the traditions that they focused on. In my case, I was the insider to the tradition of Bhaktivedanta Manor outside London. I was outsider to the tradition of Radharaman Temple. But in a sense, of course, they're very closely related, and one might say I'm insider to both. Okay, this is going in a slightly different direction. I was fortunate many years ago to meet Professor Syed Hussein Nasser, who's been very interested in comparative religion and done extensive writing. And something I came across of his interest is the idea of prophecy. Now, prophecy is a prominent notion in the Abrahamic traditions. The Christian Bible refers to what they call the Old Testament, what the Jewish tradition calls the Hebrew Bible, and several of the books of the Hebrew Bible are the books of various prophets. So there's Isaiah, there's Jeremiah, and so on. And these prophets are understood to be in some way inspired by and possibly sent by God as messengers in order to straighten out the land of Judea, the place of the Israelites. So this is very prominent, and of course, then the Islam is making the claim that the Prophet Muhammad is the final prophet. After him, there are no more prophets. He is giving the final word. But before him, there was Jesus, who is claimed to be something more than a prophet by the Christians, namely the Messiah. The Jews were expecting, waiting for a Messiah, a savior. When Jesus came, some people identified him as such, and those who did not, you can say they are the Jews of today. They say, well, very nice person, very important person, but not the Messiah. In any case, Nasser is analyzing this idea of prophecy, and he goes back to Pythagoras, who was Greek some centuries before Jesus, before the Common Era. What was it, 3, 4, 5 centuries? I forget now. And Pythagoras is also said to have had some connection with India, although there's no hard proof of that. There's a lot of consideration because he spoke of reincarnation and so on. Apparently, he and his followers were vegetarian. In any case, that connection is made. Then there is Parmenides, who is thought to be the father of Western logic and philosophy. But Nasser is pointing out that he was much more than that. He was a visionary. He was a seer. The word seer in Sanskrit is rishi. And he was also a poet. He was a healer. And he also brought law to the people. And more than that, he was a mystic of some sort who went on shamanic journeys. And on these journeys, it said that he received some message from a goddess. Parmenides is one of the pre-Socratic philosophers, so before Socrates. And he goes on, Nasser goes on to say that as Nasser sees it, Parmenides' teacher was mainly teaching what he calls hesychia. Hesychia is a Greek term which means stillness. And this practice of stillness he saw as the main way of realizing higher truth. Out of this idea comes the Greek Orthodox tradition of hesychasm. And Parmenides is remembered by the Greek Orthodox for that tradition. And it's the hesychastic tradition, if I'm not mistaken, in which there's at least one branch where they emphasize chanting the names of God. But, and this is continuing what Nasser is saying, there was over time the marginalization of prophecy. I mentioned marginalization in my this book I'm writing. Marginalization means putting to the side, putting away. So if we move very much forward in time from those early centuries of Parmenides and so on, to the medieval period, we come to William of Ockham. He was English or Welsh or Irish, I don't remember, but he was from what's now Great Britain. And this was a time of very high, intense development of Christian theology with the use of Greek philosophy, specifically Aristotle. Aristotle was considered to be the philosopher by the medieval Christian theologians. And the sort of number one figure of those Christian theologians, we can say, is Thomas Aquinas, Saint Thomas. Thomas Aquin, perhaps you call him in European languages. He's kind of the Jiva Goswami of classical Christian theology. But then along came William of Ockham. And William of Ockham challenged very forcefully this whole trend of medieval theology. And in effect, he brought it to a grinding halt because of what came to be called Occam's razor, in which he basically challenged. He said, he questioned, why make a philosophical statement if it can be reduced to something simpler? through rationalism. If we can explain something rationally, let's explain it rationally, rather than giving it some, what he saw as more or less fantastical explanation. And we can now jump further forward to the 20th century, and we could say that the end product of Occam's razor is what has come to be called positivism. Positivism is, with lots of simplification, positivism is the idea that the only thing real, the only thing we can claim to be true are bare facts. The only thing that exists in the world are facts. And then from this we get not science, but scientism, the belief that science will answer all questions. Again, I'm still talking about Syed Nasser. I remember a speech he gave in Berkeley in which he was talking about interfaith dialogue, and he was making a point that I always remembered, that because of secularism, which is very much supported by these ideas such as positivism, scientism, because of the prominence of secularism, wherever there is dialogue between two religious groups or representatives of two religious groups, he said, in fact, there is always a third partner, a third invisible partner. And that third invisible partner is secularism. One book which I found very interesting and helpful for bridging over to secularism for my own thinking has been a small book, one of the last books he wrote from Huston Smith, called Why Religion Matters. Huston Smith, I also had fortune to meet, yeah, we also had lunch. He came to our temple in Berkeley. Very nice gentleman. He was an extremely famous scholar of religion and wrote many books on the subject. So he speaks in his book of 4 walls of modern tunnel vision. I won't go into that now, but it's very helpful. Finally, on this subject of study of religion, I found it helpful to appreciate that there are essentially 2 viewpoints about religion in general. One of them we can call the viewpoint of revelation, which is represented on the left. The idea that there is a higher reality beyond the phenomenal world, and this reality gets revealed to human society in different ways. We would say it is in particular revealed through Veda, through the Vedic sages, the rishis. The other view, the opposite view, is that of the projectionism. I should say, I said revelation. Another term would be receptionism, the idea that we receive some knowledge of higher truth, that we have this capacity, and that there is a higher truth to be received. Projectionism is saying essentially exactly the opposite. It's the idea that human beings are have very fertile imagination. And through our fertile imagination, combined with our hope that there is something more than the phenomenal world, we project a reality, a higher reality, onto or from our minds onto the world. So these two, we could say these receptionism and projectionism are always in competition. I would suggest that, in fact, what we always see is a combination of both. There's always going to be, there is a reality, it is being received, and human beings are creative and are producing from our minds sometimes ideas, and these get projected into the world. And so there's a complex mixture of both. I think that was all I had on that section. Yes. Okay. Now, I had promised, 1 second. Okay, going through the doubts. Yes, here we are. I'm going to go through these very quickly and not discuss them, and we can come back to them next time. I promised to give the official ISKCON statement on interfaith dialogue. It has 5 parts, and this is part 1. In ISKCON, we view all communities and philosophies advocating and practicing love for God and founded on revealed scripture as representative of the ultimate religious expression. We also respect the spiritual worth of paths of genuine self-realization and search for the absolute truth, in which the concept of a personal deity is not explicit. Other communities and organizations advocating humanitarian, ethical, and moral standards are also valued as being beneficial to society. Second, ISKCON views dialogue between its members and people of other faiths as an opportunity to listen to others and to understand what others believe and value, to develop mutual understanding and mutual trust, and to share our commitment and faith with others while respecting their commitment to their own faith. ISKCON recognizes that no one religion can hold a monopoly on the truth, the revelation of God, or our relationship with God. We assert that the Lord, in his individual relationships with his devotees, governs these things. Fourth, ISKCON's members are encouraged to be respectful and supportive of people of faith from other traditions, and to see the need for people of different faiths to work together for the benefit of society as a whole and for the glorification of God. And finally, ISKCON affirms the responsibility of each individual to develop his or her relationship with the Supreme Lord. Okay, that's quite a bit. Some of it you may find a bit surprising, but for now, I'm going to go back and I think we can stop there unless there's some question or discussion. I know that I'm kind of throwing a lot at you, a lot of abstract stuff, but I think what I'm trying to do is give a little bit of what might be a bigger picture for dialogue. I have to go to suggest that and say that pravritti and nivritti marga would be comparable to receptionism. Well, I don't quite know how that would be connected. Opposite, I suppose so. Receptionism, well, pravritti and nivritti are both having, unstable connection. Pravritti and nivritti are margas, they're paths, they're processes, they're ways of expressing relation or distant from the world in terms of our activity, whereas receptionism and projectionism is more about what is our understanding of ultimate reality. Whether if it's receptionist, we have some spiritual understanding, and projectionism, we can say, is a fancy word for materialism. There is nothing out there. We are simply projecting what's out there. So, or what is beyond our perception. Okay, and Dira Lalita is bringing up the question of understanding different cultural backgrounds within our society to avoid dialogical misunderstanding. Yes, something I think I mentioned either last time or the time before is that in our seminar, when we hold it in Mayapur, we discuss what are obstacles to effective dialogue, and everyone agreed a major obstacle is our incapacity to have dialogue within our society, to communicate amongst ourselves. And because we are an international society with a mission, which is to attract all kinds of people, it's true, we attract people, or Krishna, we don't. Lord Chaitanya and Krishna attract all kinds of people from all kinds of cultures. And then we come together in the same place, and sometimes we may artificially ignore these differences, and to ignore the differences can be a problem in communication. So sometimes it's necessary to bring the differences forward and discuss them explicitly. Veer Gopal is raising his hand.
My humble obeisances, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and apologies I was unable to attend previously. Maharaj,
Are you back in Mayapur?
Ji Maharaj, thank you. Yes, I came back about 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
Out of quarantine now.
Yeah.
Maharaj, I was listening very carefully to this point about ISKCON's official statement, and also from your first lecture about how do we foster the culture of exchange, dialogue, the dialogical exchange within ISKCON. Forgive me if I'm sort of jumping the gun. Has that subject already been discussed?
I didn't elaborate it. I did not elaborate specifically in relation to ISKCON. I've brought up ISKCON just very tangentially, and just now I mentioned that we do have this challenge within our society. But in that first aim which you referred to, or first it was in the form of a question, how can we enrich our own experience of Krishna consciousness, something like that. My formulation of that was in the context of interacting with other religious traditions. How can we, I'm thinking individually, how can I enrich my experience of Krishna consciousness by engaging with, hearing, interacting, dialoguing with people of other traditions. Now, of course, that can be translated into making it intra-faith dialogue, dialogue within our community. It can be, and that can have two forms. One is dialogue within ISKCON, and one can be dialogue of ISKCON with other Gaudiya Vaishnava traditions, other Gaudiya Vaishnava Sangas, Gaudiya Mat, and so on. And I think all of these can be valuable.
Thank you, yes. So a subsequent sort of question based on what I hear, Maharaj, is this challenge that we face, one, the desire, or perhaps our inability, putting it more crudely, to interact openly, to address the most pressing cultural challenges that we have as an organization. We find it very challenging. And how do we go about using the knowledge that you're imparting to move forward in practical, hands-on terms? How do we go about doing this for real?
Yes, later on in my seminar,
right.
If we keep going, I will talk more about the practical side. Although I'm probably not going to give enough of detail, but I will give something. So
thank you. Thank you.
Stay tuned for more.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Sugopi wanted to, yes? You want to say something? Sugopi.
Yes. Maharaj, Hare Krishna, thank you for
Haribol.
your lecture. Yes. I wanted to ask that as you mentioned, Vedas as an example for receptionism. So, like we learned that there are two ways of receiving knowledge, ascending and descending way. So can we say that receptionism is more like a descending process where we get knowledge through our acharyas or guru parampara?
Yeah, I'm maybe I'm not, I don't think I'm making my point very well, because I'm trying to say something a little different. It's in a different context. Of course, we can, you know, we might want to use such terms in a different context, and that's okay. And yes, you could say like that, it's about descending. That would be then more about epistemology. Well, what I'm speaking about is also epistemology, but I'm trying to speak, I'm using terms which are used by scholars of religion who are standing or imagining themselves as standing outside of all religious traditions and trying to understand what is this phenomenon that we see that we are calling religion. And of course, along with that discussion is a huge discussion of how to define religion in a broadest way, whether there is such a thing as religion, or whether we are just using a term which has come into use in Europe in the last 3 or 4 centuries, and so on. So anyway, yes, so that's interesting subject. Right. Hey, Mangi Gopi, you wanted, oh, you're asking about my presentation in Piran. I am waiting to hear from them. There's going to be the online conference starting on 30th of June, and it'll go for 3 days. But that will be closed. I won't be able to invite you to that. I don't think. If they announce in some way, oh yes, anybody can go on this, then we can make that announcement. I've sent in my presentation. It was 15 minutes recorded. And of course, I can share that with you. Yeah, I would like to wait until after we have the live online discussion, and then maybe I can share that and we can discuss it. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. I'm also invited to participate in that conference.
Oh, that's right.
That's
You're there,
why I'm asking.
and also there's one other devotee.
Harvoy, yes.
Harvoy, yes.
Yes, we will be there. But I didn't still informed about the timing, so I'm asking you.
Yeah, we're all waiting. Did you make your presentation and send it?
Actually, I was working on my PhD presentation proposal, so I didn't know the terms and then the dates. And now he invited me to send my presentation, but I didn't have time to prepare. So I told him I will do it next year in Piran on site.
I see.
But now I just want to be informed regarding your presentation, because I will not be able to attend all these presentations.
Right. Yeah.
Just several, your and maybe a couple of.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'm very eager to hear.
But you will probably receive that information also in any case, no?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I will say thank you all very much. I wish you all a wonderful week in Krishna's shelter. Keep well, keep safe. We are praying for His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami, who has been in hospital with COVID-19. And as I understand, he is getting better. but we're all praying and wishing the best for him. Okay, thank you all. And
thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you. Thank you for your blessings. So see you next Saturday, Guru Maharaj.
Yes, and I think we're the proposal is there that we shift again back to start European time. It would be starting right now, 1 o'clock.
Okay, so at 1 o'clock European time.
Right.
Okay.
In that way, devotees in New York can also connect at a reasonable hour.
Yes, true.
Okay.
Okay, Guru Maharaj.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Krishna.